John Shippey was almost everyone's good friend, it seems. Generous, gregarious, and though no one knew where it had come from, he had plenty of money. He relished popularity. He had lots of friends and lots of girlfriends. But clearly not everyone was so impressed by Mr. Shippey. Someone decided to kill him. And maybe in the next 10 minutes after this reconstruction, we'll discover who they are and why they did it. Doves is in South Croydon, Surrey. And after working there for almost a quarter of a century, John Shippey had risen from a junior in the accounts department to become the finance director. Since his death, the business has discovered that about £750,000 has been siphoned from their subsidiary finance company over a period of at least 8 years.
I'm going to the cricketers. Then I'm going to get some agreements signed.
OK, have a nice weekend.
You too, darling.
Bye.
I'd known John for nearly 8 years, ever since I've joined the company. He was a big man. He had lots of presence. You always knew when he was in a room. If you had a problem and you asked him to solve your problem, he'd always try to do it. His local was the cricketers, and he had used the pub for many, many years, for both business and for pleasure.
Here comes the boy. Was you in trouble?
All right.
All right, great. Hello, John.
That's a good girl.
John was a very outgoing man.
Hello, lad. That's a lad.
That's in the pub in the cricketers.
All right, John. Now then, what's this about Friday? Everybody all right for it? Yeah, no, that's right.
John lived his life in thousands of little compartments, and you didn't really cross over from one to the other unless he really allowed you to.
All right, lads, who's up for snacking?
He was a completely larger-than-life character. A very kind, generous man, and just good fun to be with. I just cannot think of any reason at all why anyone would want to do any harm to John at all.
The night of Saturday, the 14th of December, 1991. John and one of his girlfriends, Carol, had dinner with Joe Kavanagh and his wife at a local restaurant.
You sure you don't want to drink, John?
No. I'm not going on ahead until after Christmas.
Have you told them about the new boat?
No.
Got it?
Yeah.
Where'd you get the white one?
Yeah, 40-footer. You ready for Spain in May?
Is everything all right?
Great. Yeah, as usual. Osman, since it's Christmas, why don't you take a photograph? Give me the camera.
Here you are.
Here you go. You down at Palace tomorrow?
No, I've got an appointment.
Oh, see you Monday
See
or
you
in a
Monday.
week.
Yeah, sure.
Cheers.
Bye-bye, darling.
The four of them left the restaurant at about 1 o'clock, and John drove Carol to the house he'd helped her buy in Ightham in Kent. Although he owned a number of homes, he spent much of his time here and would normally stay with Carol at the weekend. But theirs was a volatile relationship, and that night they had a sudden row. John left the house between 2 and 3 in the morning in his blue Ford Sierra Sapphire. It wasn't until 3 days later that Carol realized something might be wrong.
Hello?
Hi, Carol. It's Joe.
Oh, hello, Joe. How are you?
All right, thanks. You haven't seen John at all, have you? He hasn't been down the cricketers for a couple of days now.
No, I haven't seen him since Saturday. In fact, I've had Doves on the phone saying he missed an important meeting yesterday. It's not like him at all. He's beginning to get quite worried.
20 miles west of Ightham, the M25 crosses the M23 near the village of Merstham. Later that night, a witness was approaching the village on his way back from a badminton match.
I was driving along Rockshore Road towards Warwickswold, and I became aware of a car in front who was driving erratically, a driver and a passenger, were looking in both directions and became nervous when I came up behind them. The moment I overtook them and went to look in and see exactly who was in the car, they both deliberately turned away, so I really only had a look at the back of their heads.
The small network of roads next to the motorway is usually quiet, leading only to a scattering of private houses or to a nearby gypsy camp. Yet at 10 to 11, another witness saw something there that struck him as peculiar.
As I passed the junction of Rockshore Road and continued down towards Warwickswold, there were two cars parked on the near side. The car I came to first was a Ford Cortina, and the car in front of that was a blue Ford Sierra with a man leaning into the back of the passenger compartment. And as I passed them, I picked up the headlights in the mirror of the car, which I thought was odd. If one of the cars had broken down, that both of them had got their headlights on.
In London today, the serious fraud...
Just down the road, a couple was watching Newsnight.
...to prop up the price of Maxwell Communication Corporation shares. And the BBC has learned that a secret...
Oh, God, what was that?
I don't know. Sound like I come from the motorway. But you stay here, I'll have a look.
No, no, I'll come with you.
When to fund this.
Having picked my wife up and entered Warwickswold again, there was a blue Sierra which was completely engulfed in flames. And I thought at the time that was the car that I'd just seen previously and passed about 20 minutes earlier.
Fire and rescue.
Yes, what's the address?
In Merstham. That's a car fire, Warwickwold, Merstham. We're on our way, sir.
There'd been a spate of abandoned cars in this area, and this witness was compiling a video of them. John Shippey's body was found in the boot of his burnt-out Sierra. He died from stab wounds. These are identical glasses to the ones he was wearing. They're Sofilo sporting glasses. They're missing, as is this watch, which is a fairly distinctive Seiko watch. So if you've seen these abandoned somewhere, and John Beavers, the cases, we saw him putting identical cases to these into the back of his blue Sierra Sapphire. The cases are missing too.
Yes, they are. He kept all his personal and business papers in these cases, and he wouldn't go anywhere without them. The larger one is a Samsonite, hard grey plastic. The other one is a maroon leather case, both with combination locks. I would very much like to know where those cases are.
Now let's just fix dates in people's minds. This is 10 days before Christmas. It was a bitterly cold night that Sunday night.
Certainly. Sunday morning there would have been a very heavy frost on the car.
Now, there was this 3-4 days between his last sighting and the discovery of the car. So somewhere that blue Ford Sierra Sapphire went during that period. It must have been garaged somewhere, left out on the streets.
It's critical to our investigation. We must know where that car was. It was certainly somewhere for those 3 days.
H613 CWS, as you can see. Where do you think it probably was? What sort of area?
I would say it was in eastern Surrey, north-west Kent, maybe south London, Croydon, those sort of areas. It may have been outside a lockup. Someone may have seen it obstructing their driveway. We really must find out where that car was for those 3 days.
Now, there was an implication, as we saw in the reconstruction, that he had an appointment on the Sunday.
Yes, despite all the people we've seen, and we've seen numerous members of his close associates and business acquaintances, nobody has mentioned having that appointment with him on that Sunday, and I would very much like to hear from anybody who's made arrangements to meet John on that Sunday, the 15th of December.
We heard how he sort of compartmentalised his life. I mean, do you think you've now spoken to everybody who knew him?
No, he was a very complex character indeed, and in fact the way he compartmentalised his life has made my inquiry even more difficult. There's possibly parts of his life now that we haven't actually entered into, and if anybody out who's listening to this programme who knew John Shippey, was a girlfriend of John Shippey, had business dealings with John Shippey, who we haven't spoken to, please contact us.
Just, it's a bit of a long shot this, but 3 canisters like this, camping canisters of gas, butane gas, were what detonated that explosion in the car. Now, each of them has serial numbers on the bottom, and the 3 in the back of the car, the serial number's 00491. And if you sold those to somebody before Sunday the 15th of December, remember anything about them, 00491, do please give us a call. Mr. Beavis and his colleagues are waiting for anybody who's got any information. Here's the number, 081 811 8181. Remember, if you prefer, you can speak to a BBC researcher. Or you can call Reigate Police Station direct. That's on 0737 765 040. That's 0737 765 040.